if you got poop on something, would you wash it off and clean it, or would you throw it away? And the context for this rule is more to do with clothing or just, stuff around the house. But again, I think it's actually applicable to Lego. Now, maybe if visualizing poop on your Lego is traumatizing, to say the least, you can exchange that with, anything else that is
Nutella.
equally gross. I mean, that would be probably more delicious, but we don't
judge on AFOLs Welcome.
The point I'm getting at here, right, is substitute it for whatever else you want. Vomit. The point of the poop here is not for it to necessarily be poop. It's to be sufficiently disgusting.
Hello, bricks, chicks, and minifigures. You are listening to AFOLs Welcome, where we talk about all things Lego from the perspective of two adult collectors. We're your co-host. I'm Grinch.
And I'm West.
And today we are discussing Toy Story Lego. Just kidding. We are discussing what to do with your old Lego, which also just so happens to be the plot of Toy Story. But before we do that, West, let's banter over some bricks.
Let's do it, Grinch.
Last week, I was going to say we were challenged. We were not challenged. We were asked by one of our listeners during our brick mail section to share our wanted list or wants under a specific threshold of sets, because they were talking about how the Lego website, as we had talked about in one of our episodes, does not have good suggested pricing tiers to shop for Lego, because it feels like they haven't updated them since maybe 1998. So West, do you want to remind the listeners what those tiers were as I load up my list here?
Yeah, so this came from Rebecca, and she asked us to think through sets that we wanted or liked that were under $30. And her kind of premise is like, this is the easy pickup that you don't really think about too much, right? Then the one under $100, which is you're putting in a little more thought, but for most adults, that's an extra trip to the grocery store. Then the next one is that 150 to 220, and then the 300 and plus tier of set. So she gave us 4 categories there to explore, and just basically asked us, like, what would you pick if for each of these categories? So, Grinch, $30 and under. What's your thought? What's your pickup?
So I would like to preface with my selection are sets that are truly on my wanted list. I am looking at lego.com. I'm logged in. I'm looking at my actual wanted list.
There you go.
This is about as real as it gets, folks. Yeah. this is real life. And I have 2 here. I'm not going to say why I have 2, but I actually only this is a hard tier because there's just not much under $30.
Nope.
But I have the Fry's food truck.
Okay.
I bought a couple of the food trucks as an impulse purchase when I was traveling, and they were just fun. And it was a kind of a fun way to add it to like just my little modular road. So I just picked these up now. They're quick builds. They're not super sophisticated like a Speed Champions build, which is a positive and a negative. Those Speed Champion builds are awesome, but they're just kind of little easy city sets to just throw together. They're fun. There's a whole diverse lineup of these now. And the Fry's one, well, it's not my favorite. It certainly doesn't disappoint. It may be my favorite, like truck without the food part. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's also something just kind of like fun about these. They kind of remind me of a roller coaster tycoon food truck, because while food trucks are absolutely a thing, they're usually just a box truck or a trailer, right? These all have these kind of ridiculous, like giant donuts, or it's shaped like a hamburger, which reminds me a lot of those roller coaster tycoon food shacks. And so the fry is no exception there. It's certainly just a fun little food truck. The other one I had was the epic battle Spider-Man versus Sandman, which was recently came out, I think, towards the end of last year. So
Nice.
what about you, West?
Well, Grinch, my pickup for this one is usually going to be either something in the Cities line or the Speed Champions line. And so that would be basically my impulse purchase. Although unfortunately, both of those tiers or both of those lines are starting to encroach that $30 point. So Speed Champions these days are right at $27, and the tier for the City Wave that came out in January, there was just one or two sets under $30 in that wave, which was not very impressive. So for the sake of the discussion, if I was in a Target, a Lego store, and I was like just looking to get an impulse purchase, I think I would purchase probably the McLaren W1 for $27.99, which is their new McLaren Speed Champions car that came out just this fall as part of the line with Lightning McQueen, and there was a Ferrari and the Bugatti in that line as well. And so that would be my pickup. I really enjoy the Speed Champions line for the exact reason you mentioned, the complexity for the bang for your buck. You know, for $27, you're going to get a really complex build that looks really great. And as much as I've sort of maybe had some thoughts on the scaling issues of the Speed Champions line, when you're doing it at that supercar scale, I think that is like the exact scale it needs to be. So Speed Champions is my pick, Grinch.
Nice. And like I said, with my fries, Speed Champions, nice little complex build. The nice part about those is they're small but mighty.
Yes.
You know, you get a lot of good building experience there. So the next tier was the not too damaging impulse buy under $100. So West, why don't you go ahead?
Well, like I said, this is a hard tier to go for because now you have so many different choices. I pretty much limited myself again to effectively icons, or I think I basically limited it to icons and city because I really wouldn't pick much up else outside of this line. And for me, the one that I decided to pick up was the yellow delivery truck, which comes in at an eye-watering $99.99. Now, if you are a longtime listener to the channel, you'll remember when these first were released about 2 years ago. They were on sale for $75 at your local Costco. That was a much more palatable price, but it is right now $99.99. But what a fantastic build. Some really wonderful printed pieces in this set, and just a classic delivery truck that we have not gotten in Lego for a long, long time. So that would be my selection. Grinch, what about you?
I thought you had one of these.
I do.
Also, it is. Oh, so you would have two now.
Well, this would be more of just like if I was shopping, not, you know what I mean? So.
Got it. It's actually on sale on Amazon right now for $88.99. So
still not $75, but much better than $100.
So this was actually my biggest tier as well. There's a lot here. It's a wide variety too. So what to pick? What to pick? So I will go with. Do I want to go with the embarrassing one or the like just dark horse? Like that's a good, solid pick.
Oh, probably the
right. I'll do the embarrassing one.
What's embarrassing?
One. I have the beautiful horse.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I thought you were gonna make fun of me.
Why?
Well, honestly, I have it because my wife loves horses, so that's why it's on the list. So every once in a while, I got she gets a set too, and so I've been meaning to pick that. We've just been waiting. She's like, "Oh, it's $55." I'm like, "It's Lego, it's fine." And then she's like, "I'll wait till it's on sale." So I'm waiting for that one to be on sale. I guess that's why I just haven't bought it yet, but I may just have to buy it. But
There you go.
anyways, it's a good little design, and building Lego with my wife is fun. So
Yeah.
win-win. The next tier here is the give or take. So make an argument if you want a little bit more, a little bit less, but it's $150 to $220.
Yeah. And so this one's tough, Grinch, because this is a weird, you and I were kind of lamenting before the show, really with me kind of frustrated because as I was trying to kind of come up with my picks, I found that the pricing for this is just kind of all over the place. It's a little wild. And so what I mean by that is what used to be $200 now is pretty much retailing for $230. And so if you're kind of stuck at that 220 tier, you're kind of missing a lot of those sets that were priced at 200. Anyways, what a wide open tier. The other problem is the Lego website doesn't allow you to sort by this, right? So they basically go $100 and up. And so you're kind of, as you're looking through all the sets, you're just like, oh gosh, okay, that one's not in the range. That one's, so it's kind of challenging to get to that point. That being said, this is now a very wide open category. So my recommendation for something in this, maybe not necessarily something on my wish list, but recommendation would be the Concorde that came out a few years ago. It's a really big set. You get a lot of pieces. It's I think a set that is bigger than you expect it to be and feels very much like a $200 set. So when you buy that one, you get every penny of $200. And yes, anyways, it looks great.
I'm shocked that you picked a plane.
I like to surprise people sometimes,
I'm just, like, what? So for me, I actually technically had two choices on my wish list. And I have the Diagon Alley Wizard Shops, the micro scale. It's $200. It's $199.99. The micro scale Diagon Alley Wizarding Shops. I love kind of those tinier micro scale builds, and I don't collect a lot of Harry Potter, but when I do, I drink Dos Equis. No, when I do tend to like.
I think there's a whole generation who won't understand that reference, which is so sad.
And that's okay. That's okay.
One's for us millennials.
Yep. Pour one out for me. But so the Diagon Alley Wizarding Shops. I don't get a lot of Harry Potter, but every once in a while I do, and I tend to get these micro scale, nano scale, architecture type ones. I really liked the Hogwarts Castle that they did in this scale. Well, I guess I really liked the architecture Hogwarts Castle that they did. I wish they would do that with more licensed themes. But I also really like the nano one, and this is kind of the best of those both worlds because you get the micro figures, the nano figures in it. So yeah, that's on my list. It's been on my list for a while. I don't know what I'm waiting for. I think I'm just waiting for a gift with purchase and a reason to get it, sort of thing. I've got a lot of Marvel on my list too, but that tends to go on sale on like Amazon quite a bit. You can usually find it for 20 or 30% off. So I'll usually wait, do a Target run or two, and I got the Diagon Alley Wizarding Shops.
Nice. Well, Grinch, one of the things that I want to add here too is while it's sort of outside the price range, it comes in at $130. I would add the Iron Man Mark III Collector's Edition.
Yeah, to that was on mine too. But
just a little outside the price range that Rebecca gave us, but I think a worthy contender for this category. So
even at $120, I could make an argument that like if I had $220 to spend, I would still be like, cool, I just saved $100 and I have a better Lego set.
You basically just made $200.
I just made $100.
Yeah, some AFOL math there.
Insane. All right, West, our heavily forethought $300 set.
Yes. Well, Grinch, actually, I struggled with this category, again, because the pricing guide on Lego, the way that they sort stuff sucks. And so literally sorting through everything from $100 and up now is incredibly difficult. I think the Lego website had over 10 pages on there. So there was just so much to pull through. And I kind of went back to the old standby here, which is, I think if I had $300 to just spend on Lego, I would go buy, or more, I would probably just go buy the Rivendell set.
I was about to say, this is AFOL math. You had $300 to spend, so you spent $6.
Yeah, well, $5 right now, but yes, exactly. But it's too good of a set to pass up. If somebody shows up to my door and hands me $500 and says, "But you have to spend this on Lego," I'd be like, "Okay, I'll go get the Rivendell set." So, anyways, that was my selection. Grinch, how about you?
Was this supposed to be like a scary situation? Like, oh man, I don't know what I do. Somebody just showed up at my house. I was like, here's $500, go buy a Lego set. Like, I don't know, you were saying it like it was such a negative thing, but I'm so sorry, West.
Well,
my answer is not what you're going to think it is. And here we go. Like I said, this is from my personal wish list here. So we're going to get personal. If I had $300 or more to spend on a Lego set today,
you'd buy the aquarium? Really?
I wouldn't buy anything.
Oh.
Because I have Rivendell. I actually, when we were talking, I was sorting by to the 100 price range, and I was sorting, highest to lowest. And up there, you got things like Titanic. I've got Pirates of the Caribbean already. I've got Rivendell. I got Bardur. I have every set that I want that is over $300.
Nice.
So I would not buy anything. And I think the lesson there is, just because you have the money, just because some random dude shows up at your door and gives you $500 to spend on Lego.
Of Lego vouchers.
Okay, actually, if that's the case, just spend $500 on Lego. But just because you could spend $300 on Lego doesn't mean you have to.
Yeah,
and
there you go.
Speaking of spending money, West, I will not be here next week.
No.
I will be on vacation out of the country. So Mama Grinch is coming down to watch Baby Grinch. And I'm going on a little vacay. So West will hold down the fort for us next week. Rebecca, thank you again for the robust brick mail and the question. And West, I'm excited for my vacation, but do you know what else is exciting?
Ooh, what's that, Grinch?
I ask you this every week, man, and you're still not picking it up. Exciting Lego news. Exciting Lego news.
Alrighty. So first up, we have some reveals. Lego Editions Scuderia Ferrari helmets were officially announced. That was for Charles Leclerc and the one and only... I'm totally forgetting his name right now. Oh my gosh.
Dude.
Lewis Hamilton.
He's like the Denver Broncos. Yeah, thank you.
There we go. The Lego floral picture frame gift with purchase was revealed. The Legoland Castle exclusive set was revealed. Lego April 1st shop exclusives have been revealed. And then an announcement. The Lego has launched a mini builds instructions page. So Grinch, what stands out this week in Lego news?
Apparently Lego listens to the podcast, because on the episode where we talked about 5 things Lego could do better, we said it'd be great if they had a section or an area of like pick a brick or something like that, where they had some little builds that you could do. Now, apparently, they're also laughing at us while listening because this is not that, but it's exactly what we were asking for, just executed differently. So I think it's cool though. So for those that don't know, it's a mini build instruction page. So it has instructions for like a small dragon or something like that. It looked like it was a bunch of the store builds, the store mini builds that you could do for the store events. They had those instructions. And it sounds like it links to Pick a Brick too. So it's just a kind of cool additional thing that you can do, you know?
Yeah.
And I always think that's fun. Otherwise, the helmets, the Ferrari helmets, they look crisp. They look clean. I was scrolling through Reddit because I like to just get people's reactions, and a couple of the reactions were pretty funny because people were like, "We got this instead of Lego Pirates," or Lego just making a helmet. And I got kind of thinking about like, you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't, if you're Lego, right? Because if these didn't sell well, does that mean people don't want Formula One? Not really, right? And I was kind of thinking more of like on the lines of like the Ninja Turtle brickheads, like, oh well, we'll just see if people want Ninja Turtles, and then it's like, well, if they didn't sell, is that because people didn't want Ninja Turtles or because they didn't want Ninja Turtle brickheads? And so there was just a lot of negative comments about these of like, well, Lego just want these, and it's then you see the like kind of comment of, well, they are a multi-billion-dollar company with the sole goal of selling these sets, so maybe they do know what they want. So curious to see how these do, because it's kind of the first-ish foray into a non-vehicular F1 set, right? It's almost, I mean, I don't have all the data in front of me to like substantiate this claim. However, I cannot recall off the top of my head if we ever got an F1 set that did not have a car. So I'll be curious to see how these perform.
Yeah. Well, I want to back up for 1 second and just talk about that mini build page, because you mentioned that we basically brought this up to Lego. I do want to add we didn't bring it up to Lego. That was a misspeak on my part. We said this is something Lego could do better. And I specifically want to mention and add that like what we were going after was things like trees or, other additions to cities. Like, hey, you want like a cool little birdhouse thing? Here's a build so you can put it on top of a modular building on the roof and just add more variety and life to your city, for example. I don't think I really wanted like in-store creator, mini dragons or whatever.
But they're posting instructions online, thus why they're listening, but laughing.
Yeah. So I think it's a really nice step in the right direction. We've seen that a few times. I think going back to the F1, I think they had an F1 podium build that you could then source all the pieces from. And it sounds like we talked the other day that there's kind of like a pseudo battle packs with some of the different factions that you could like source pieces from, like all kind of in one. You didn't have to go and find the heads, the torsos, the legs or whatever. It was all kind of in one spot, which is really nice. So I feel like they're getting there maybe, but maybe we could get there a little faster, would be kind of appreciated. As for the F1 stuff, Grinch, I mean, I think the helmets are really interesting. I really like the addition of Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc. They're both Ferrari drivers, which is kind of odd because you're not seeing any other team represented in F1. Which I don't know if that's more of a partnership then with Ferrari or if it's a partnership with just exclusively F1 or like how that's playing out. Lego obviously works with both of them, so who knows, right? But what I do like is you get kind of a darker skin tone for the Leclerc figure, darker pale skin tone, just off pale. And then you also have a really great skin tone for the Lewis Hamilton figure as well, with a really great hairpiece. And I've already seen people put the head and hairpiece on Killmonger bodies. So it's like Killmonger without a mask, and it looks so great. So there's so many things you can do with that. Some interesting pieces. That visor piece on the helmet looks like that's a brand new piece. So that's an interesting addition there. Other than that, I mean, it's a we've had helmets and stuff before, so nothing really stands out as like revolutionary other than some prints and what I would assume are some decals. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how well they do. I will say, first and foremost, the internet kind of lunacy out there who boils this down to like, we didn't get Lego Pirates for this, I think is just such an uninformed or poorly informed position to take on Lego. And like, if you're, so upset that that's what you're writing in the comments, like, I think you need to cool off and go take a walk. And
first of all, Lego's statement was we would actually be getting Lewis Hamilton Brickhead. They didn't say pirate. They said brick. I'm just kidding. They didn't say that at all. But yeah.
It's to your point. It's just silly, right? I mean, it's like, how would, anyways, yes. I just flabbergasted it.
Yes, yes, indeed.
Just
Lego is ruining Lego.
I mean, yes. Anyways, shaking my head because the idea that you got this in exchange for something else or versus something else, like it was just that simple, I think is completely silly. We have no idea how Lego plans things strategically over the years. I'm sure they're very purposeful with the way they put things together. They've also had this incredible brand partnership with F1 over the last year that's just wrapped up in 2025 that looks like it's continuing into 2026. Why would they not do something like this? Star Wars helmets have sold well. The Marvel helmets have sold well. They already know F1 sells well. So why would they, I think, especially for those fans of F1 and teams like Ferrari, it does make sense. And a driver like Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton, I mean, Lewis Hamilton is one of the greatest F1 drivers of all times at this point. I mean, he's had an incredible career and he's kind of on like, not his comeback tour, but this is like Michael Jordan the second time around with the Chicago Bulls, basically. And I think, it totally makes sense to honor both of these drivers. I wouldn't be surprised if we got like an Ayrton Senna helmet in the past, in a follow-up lineup for this, and maybe some of the
I would be surprised if we got it in the past.
Well, I suppose what I'm saying is as represented in the past, right? We've gotten the minifigure already with the F1 car, but I think getting his helmet was so unique with the Brazilian flag on it and stuff. So anyways, I think you could see more of these come out over the course of the, Lego's continued collaboration with F1. So.
All right. Well, any other things you wanted to cover? The exclusives, the Lego Shop exclusives, the Germany postcard.
I mean, Grinch,
some new exclusives coming out.
We chatted about this last week where we were just like, it is such a like dry news week this, last week, and it's continued to be, but there's rain in the forecast, ladies and gentlemen, and we're expecting some wonderful reveals here shortly. It's just, it takes time.
And when it rains, it pours, and it will make you poor.
Tears of joy.
See what I did there?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
See,
there you go.
Because I'm going to be spending so much money.
Yeah. Nice.
That I'm going to fill up my wish list. So
you'll have some plus $300 sets in there in no time.
Yes, indeed. Well, why don't we head over to today's topic?
Let's do it.
Today's topic. All right, Wes. So for today's topic, we are talking about what to do with your old Lego sets. And I think you're ready to nerd out. What you've got a method here.
Well, Grinch, we're coming off of a very heavy topic from last week. I wouldn't say heavy, but that was a very...
I cried.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was emotional.
A couple times. Yeah.
No, for the listener who has not joined us last week, and viewer, that was a discussion about the ethics and morality of the Lego group and how they represent those well. And so this week we're just chatting about what to do with old Lego, and really, maybe a continuation of the conversation we had of some of the things that Lego could do with sort of the initiatives with recycling and stuff like that. But before we get into that discussion, right, I wanted to have the discussion of how do you know when a Lego set should be removed from your collection? So Grinch, at what point are you like, I don't want to keep this Lego set in its current form anymore? Like, when do you reach that conclusion?
For me, I'd say a lot of times it comes down to space, or there's a better version of a set out there. Now, I'm a degenerate. I will not sell it. I hold on to it. When I tend to sell stuff, it's more of a retool of the collection sort of thing than a immediate trigger of like, wow, you gotta go.
Yeah.
And I know selling it is one thing that you can do, right? So maybe there's multiple reasons of what to do with your used Lego. So if I'm not selling it, get it put into a box. I usually try to get kind of everything collected with it. I'll keep the minifigures out on display depending on what it is. For example, Marvel. There's so much Marvel. I have so much of my space dedicated to Marvel. I was like, I'm not going to get rid of the sets. I am no longer buying every single Marvel set. I did, I should say, have every single Marvel set, but I don't know. I'm kind of tired of buying like just random 4+ sets just to say that I have every single Marvel set. I don't know if that don't need to be me no more. I still have every single Marvel minifigure, and I will continue that because I've already kind of got that feat, and I think it's cool. But
you're too deep. You're too deep into that one, aren't you?
I don't know what's wrong with me, West. But no, like from a set perspective, sometimes you'd be buying a set, you don't want to buy the set, and you literally have all the minifigures, so you're not even getting that from it, right? Or you're buying the Spider-Man versus Ghost Rider motorcycle, and you're like, I don't want to build this like crappy oversized motorcycle. I just need the Ghost Rider from this. And I don't know, that feels really bad. So unless I find that on super sale, I'll just buy the minifigure when I need to make a minimum on a Bricklink order sort of thing. So that's kind of a couple reasons why I might pare it down.
Yeah, nice. Well, I very much kind of fall in your boat. I've mentioned in past episodes for listeners, this is now I'm approaching a third move this year for 3 years in a row. My kind of main Lego collection is still back where I started from, and I haven't seen it now in about 2 years. So everything's been packed up and sealed up, and it's nice and safe. But being separated for 2 years from stuff does give you a bit of a perspective of thinking back to things like, why did I buy that? And to your point, Grinch, something comes out where you're like, man, like I really like that minifigure or whatever, and I really want that. And so then you buy like a $90 set, and you're like, why? I think with some time and space, it's like, why did I spend the money on something like that when I could just go to Bricklink and buy the minifigure if that's what I really wanted, right? And so I think now with time and space, it's just a matter of, if it's not something that I want to proudly display as like a collection, or something that I, feeds into like my city or something like that, I just don't need it around, and it's kind of just taking up space. And so we're going to talk through kind of different things you can do with sets when they take up space. But I did want to introduce the listener to 2 thought processes, 2 paradigms, if you will, for how to handle things that maybe you want to get rid of.
Two paradigms, that's like 40 cents.
Grinch, I'm gonna share these with you, and then I want you to think through, like, do you think this could work with a Lego collection, yes or no? And so for the listeners, you might have heard of one or both of these things, depending on your age and your exposure to social media. So we'll get started. And the first one that I thought of as we were thinking about this episode was actually just the KonMari method, which was originally championed by Marie Kondo. And just, some really basics about this method that I think are kind of interesting is, and she says on our website, and we'll link this into our link tree as we do. But she says most tidying methods advocate a room by room or little by little approach, which doom you to pick away at your piles of stuff forever. The KonMari method rather encourages tidying by category, not by location. So begin with clothes and then move to books, papers, miscellaneous items, and finally sentimental items. And then she kind of concludes, keep only those things that speak to the heart and discard things that no longer spark joy. Thank them for their service and let them go. And I think that is a really interesting way to approach Lego, right? Because it's not just like staring at your like whole collection and going, where do I start, right? You could just sit there and say, okay, for example, like I collect the modular buildings, and I liked collecting some of the Speed Champions cars to kind of add some depth into the modular building or city that I was kind of, building out. Are these Speed Champion cars still adding something to the city? Yes or no? And to your point, like, do I have a newer version of it? Does it still, as she says, spark joy, right? And if it doesn't, like, hey, acknowledge that like it wasn't necessarily a waste. Like, you don't have to be hard on yourself, but then also make that decision of like, but if you're not using it, like why are you keeping it around, right? And so that's when you can kind of follow up with the courses of action that we'll talk about here in a second. But that's the KonMari method. I actually think that works pretty well for Lego, making that decision. Grinch, what do you think? I think actually you've done this subconsciously, if I might add, but or maybe
I
consciously.
take every one of my Fit minifigures and I look at them in the eye and I say, are you bringing me joy? Sometimes they talk to me, sometimes they don't. Then my wife takes me to the doctor. No, yeah, I mean, we talked about it when we talked a little bit about what I think it was collection fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say years ago.
It was
but
years
I can
ago.
safely say
2 years ago.
Years ago, because it was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
I guess it was like a year and a half.
As we are approaching our 100th episode, by the way. So
yeah. Wild. And so yeah, no, I agree. I think there's no reason to hold on to something. I would say you may, and I think it comes with a little bit of maturity, but you should ask the question of, does this currently bring me joy, and could it bring me joy? Right? Versus just like, as somebody who can be a little bit impulsive, right? I would like to stress that and could it part, right? Because you don't want to just make a decision and just get rid of something in the moment. So, really focusing on the like just having that self-awareness, I think is what's really important.
Yeah. I think that's really good. And then I think being comfortable to let something go, acknowledge that it might have, you had fun building it, right? Like, and again, that's where it's like, it's not, you don't need to shame yourself and be like, oh, I wasted money on this. Like, you bought the set, you built it. It probably brought you some joy. It's just no longer currently bringing you joy. And to your point, like, you don't have plans for it to bring you joy in the future. So what are you holding on to it for, right? And I think that's something that can go a long way. I'm thinking back to some Star Wars sets that I bought in like 2019, 2020, for example, that I just don't use anymore. And I'm fairly certain if I took them to a Bricks and minifigure, I could probably get back the money that I paid for it. Now, maybe not, adjusted for inflation, but like I could probably get MSRP for that set these days, with those guys even taking money off for the fact that they're going to want to resell it. So they're probably only giving me 50 to 60% of the set value anyways. So like, there's some flexibility there and some ability to not necessarily trade up, but you could get your money back depending on the condition of stuff. If you've kept it in good condition, or, Grinch, I know you've sold a lot of stuff that was still sealed in the box because you were just like, I don't know why I bought this. And now I'm just going to get rid of it.
The backlog gets a little big sometimes.
Yeah, but I think that's wise. So, anyways, that's why I said I think you actually do this subconsciously, and I still feel that way. So
I do it consciously.
Well, there you go. So,
and I think it's important to have the self-awareness to be able to do it consciously.
Yeah, absolutely. So the next method, is funny.
Is this a typo?
No, it's not a typo. This next method is called the poop rule. And this one has been widely spread all over Instagram and TikTok for the last, I'm
sorry. Can you say that again? The what rule has been widely spread?
Yes, the poop rule has been widely spread. Yes.
How do you spread the poop rule?
Carefully. Anyway, so
I feel like there's a joke here.
I'm sure there is. It's been around for a while. I found an article from apartmenttherapy.com. It's dated October 5th, 2024, just to give you some, understanding of what the rule, the shelf life of this poop rule is. So roughly last, 2 falls ago. But the poop rule basically is relatively straightforward. It comes from an ADHD TikToker called @ADHDorganized. And their hack was pretty straightforward. They challenged viewers, listeners, however you engage with TikTok or Instagram.
You talk.
The basic question of, hey, is this item important enough that if it got poop on it, you would wash it off and keep it? And if not,
I'm sorry. We need to vet your notes before every episode. Okay.
I need you to bear with me.
I have bared long enough.
Yeah. Okay. So hold on. Hold your horses, Grinch.
Basically, I'm holding the poop in.
Basically, the premise of this,
I'm practically prairie dogging over here,
is if you got poop on something, would you wash it off and clean it, or would you throw it away? And the context for this rule is more to do with clothing or just, stuff around the house. But again, I think it's actually applicable to Lego. Now, maybe if visualizing poop on your Lego is traumatizing, to say the least, you can exchange that with, anything else that is
Nutella.
Equally gross. I mean, that would be probably more delicious, but we don't
judge on AFOLs Welcome.
The point I'm getting at here, right, is substitute it for whatever else you want. Vomit. The point of the poop here is not for it to necessarily be poop. It's to be sufficiently disgusting as to then make you ask that question of like, am I, does this item, kind of going back to Marie Kondo a little bit, right? But like, does it meet a certain threshold of importance in my life where I'm going to make sure I clean this up and, get it back to pristine condition? Or are you just willing to kind of chuck it? And I would submit.
I have so many questions, West. Number one, you see my point of I need to vet all of your notes going forward. I hope you understand why you've lost privilege. Number two, this is a thing where I would like the story behind the story here. Did this you said TikToker, did they poop on something by accident and were like, oh, you know what, life hack, I just pooped my pants and I didn't even want the pants, so I just threw them out.
That's my new
didn't even need them again.
I would imagine it would be maybe something. I mean, we're both, fathers to young daughters. If your toddler or your baby got poop on something, would you, if it was like an old shirt, would you just throw it away, or would you, try to clean it up? And I think that's sort of, again, the premise here. My sort of,
all right, well, get, throw some minifigures on the floor, get a little butt butter, and splatter it on them, and decide if you want that Cloud City Boba Fett or not.
If excrement is not your preferred method of thinking about this, I would maybe think about it differently. Of like, hey, if I had this set and it, one piece went missing or it got scratched and I needed to replace it.
No. There's a big difference between one piece going missing on your 9,000 piece UCS Death Star and dropping dookie all over it. I mean,
yeah, Grinch, I hear you. I think I was just trying to provide like another methodology for approaching this process, but I get what you're saying. So it's not a perfect, parallel here. But anyways, I do still think it's a valid question of like, hey, if something were to get sufficiently dirty or disgusting, is this something I would take the time to clean or not? And that then is that cutoff again for that idea of like, no, I want to keep this, or no, I'm ready to kind of not necessarily remove this from my life, but explore other avenues for this Lego set. So, Grinch, unless you have any other comments about my two methodology here, why don't we chat on different ways that you can repurpose your Legos?
Well, next time you get a little butt truffle because you threw a fudge missile at one of them, then the next time you're playing with Lincoln logs and realize it's not a Lincoln log, I'm just a little lost for words. What can I say?
No, I don't know. You seem to have come up with lots of different ways to describe poop. So
there you go, saying that word again. All right. All right. So there's a website. It's called www.rebrickable.com.
Have you heard of it?
Bringing this back to Lego, where you can reuse sets, right? So then the thing you can do is you can reuse sets. And one thing you can do is if you want to rebuild them but are tired of building the same set, you can actually go to rebrickable.com. There's a section for alternates where you can actually look up a set and people have built other things from that set, and you can build that too. And I think sometimes it's free. A lot of times it's free. The more nicer stuff, or which is subjective, could be premium depending on what it is. Not typically with the alternates, but that's one thing you could do. But in general, you could just rebuild sets, cycle through sets. If you've got 10 favorite sets, you could build one. And a lot of the expensive sets, right? I don't remember the exact threshold, but I think it's like more than $70 usually comes with a brick separator, right? Or does come with a brick separator, I should say, which makes it super easy to take sets apart. So therefore, you can take the set apart, rebuild another one, and kind of do it that way. There's actually even websites that you can use to subscribe to different brick services. I think there's one called like Rebrick It or something like that, where it's like you can actually just get sent the set. You can build it. It's like Netflix, OG Netflix for Lego sets. So instead of getting sent the DVD, you get sent the Lego set that you can build and send back.
We have an au pair, and she is from the United Kingdom, and she mentioned over there, and I think I've seen it a few times here in the United States, they have building cafes, and you go to the cafe and you basically can just build. And they either have sets that you can build, or it's, just like a brick bin. And you can just build from that, like a free build. But the idea is like it's a set that can continually be rebuilt over time, right? So that's not necessarily what to do with sets, but just kind of another interesting aside. What I like about the alternates Grinch is there's some nostalgia to that, because in the old Lego sets back in the day, but in like the late 90s, early 2000s, especially the Star Wars sets, always had alternate builds on the back of the box. And what was so funny about them was they were never associated with like, something out of lore. They'd take like the X-Wing and they'd turn it into like some odd looking walker or something. And again, never intended to look like something from Star Wars. It just always was kind of its own goofy thing. And they never gave you instructions either. So if you were going to build one of these, you basically just had to eyeball the set on the box and try your best to, come up with how it was internally structured and built. But that was kind of a fun thing that they used to do. And that is a very popular thing in the Lego community for AFOLs. You can find lots of videos online. I think a lot of city builders like to do this, where they'll take, modular buildings, for example, and people will do alt builds with the modular buildings, and they'll fill their cities with alternate builds of the modulars instead of the actual ones. So there is very much like a cult following to the alternate build discussion. So yeah, definitely something that's going on strong and that has had a lot of history in the Lego community. So I think that's a really, really good one. What other stuff, Grinch, can you do?
Well, we talked about ethics and morals, so you could always be a good community member, and you could donate your Lego, right? Local school, library, community center, maybe to your favorite podcasters from AFOLs Welcome. No, I'm totally teasing on that last part, but yeah, I mean, you could donate them, right? I mean, you don't have to hold on to them if you don't want them. And there's less fortunate people out there that could use them, or a community of people that could use them too, right? So
a foster care service or something like that, kids who would love to get their hands on some Lego. You'd mentioned the donating thing, and I think we've shared it in the podcast before, but that's how our Lego collection started as kiddos. It was my preschool teacher whose son was going off to college, and she said, "Hey, he doesn't want this anymore. I don't know what to do with this." And she gave us bins and bins full of Lego that basically seeded our collection to what it was. And yeah, anyways, so you can always do something like that too if you're just not sure of what to do with your Lego. But I would imagine most listeners on this channel, unless they're doing it for charitable reasons, are probably not just willy-nilly giving away Lego sets. But you can still make someone's day or childhood by giving away sets. So
yeah, I mean, I have kind of an area of my collection where I've bought some used stuff, and I go through it, and there's some pieces that are maybe a little bit weathered or slightly damaged that I'm not going to use, and right now they're just in a bin, and I've been trying to think of what to do with that bin, and this might be a good solution.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you kind of alluded to this next point earlier, but you can always sell sets, right? I mean, while it shouldn't be necessarily the reason you buy Lego and open it up, I remember I was at a Lego store one time, and a parent asked the employee why the set is so expensive. They're like, "Well, you got to think of it as an investment." I was like, no. They were there buying it for like
their 7-year-old,
and the employee, who was like a younger man, was like, maybe college age. It's like, no, it's an investment. And I was like, I mean, sure, if they don't open it,
is a Lego bro
just so happens,
like a Lego,
a Lego bro,
yeah.
Lego bro, Brago,
like leg bros,
leg bro. But like leg bros is kind of sounds like something you find on OnlyFans or something. But anyways, I digress. But it does hold its value more than something like my computer mouse, right? Like I bought this, like $100. Like I can't sell this probably for 50 or even 20. It's kind of useless at this point as long as it's been open and used. Like most people probably aren't going to buy this, right?
Yeah.
But most Lego sets, you could at least get half of it back, right? Because there's a utility to them, right? And that's what kind of makes Lego a really interesting collectible. Like, Pops, for example, the little guys, right?
The Funko
Pops. Funko Pop, thank you. So I was like, I know there's a word in front of that. The Funko Pops, like
Clearly
you can't really
fans.
use them, right? Like they just sit on a shelf. Like, yes, I can display my Lego set, but I could also use the pieces at the end of the day. So there is a retained value. There's kind of that minimum threshold, which is, well, if all these pieces are worth this much, then all those pieces are worth that much, right? So you can always sell them and buy more sets, right? You can either, when I was first kind of getting back out of my dark ages, and if I went down the whole rabbit hole of like, oh my gosh, Lego investing, like, and I kind of was like, well, if I want to invest, I should just invest. Like Lego takes up a lot of space, especially for somebody that moves quite a bit. Like S&P 500 returns on average like 10% a year. Like just do that. But some people will, or they used to. I don't really hear about people doing it anymore. But like, back in the day, you'd buy two sets, one to build and one to sell in 3 years. And then, after 3 years, you just start selling them off, and you'd essentially double your money at that point and just fund your hobby that way. And some people did that, and I know that some people did that because or at least they claimed to do it. But you could sell sets, right? And if you wait long enough, you can recoup most of what you paid for it. If you're, I wouldn't say if you're lucky, but not in every single case. But you could recoup as much as you paid for it.
But if
worst case scenario, you get half of it back, and it's like having a 50% off coupon on Lego every single time, right? Like that's not a bad place to be either. So you could sell.
Absolutely. And to your point, Grinch, I mean, not everything is going to see the returns. A great website for that, if you're interested in investing in Lego, would be something like Brick Economy, not necessarily to help make decisions, but I would say more to inform things like trend analysis of which themes do pretty well. They show, the set in the theme that's grown the most over the years, for example. And so some things are pretty predictable. The modular buildings, when they retire, always do well. The UCS Star Wars sets, when they retire, always do well. But, some of the sets you can pretty much buy now retired for what they cost MSRP. So this isn't a universal rule for Lego that just, go to your nearest Walmart and start buying, anything and everything on the shelf, right? So you do need to know. And then there's the odd ducklings. The specifically, I'm thinking of the Princess Amidala minifigure from the Naboo submarine, the kind of the latest version of that. As I understand it, the submarine did not sell very well, which meant that Amidala minifigure did not go into widespread circulation. And then, due to the fact that it only came out in one set and it wasn't widely available, it just became an extraordinarily rare minifigure. And then anyone trying to, complete their Star Wars collection, so sometimes it's just weird things like that where, those one-off minifigures are usually going to sell well too. So anyways, this isn't an episode about investing in Lego. It's just an episode about what to do. Grinch, you did mention parting out stuff. And so I wanted to backtrack 1 second to say, hey, if you're not wanting to physically get rid of something, but you no longer want to display it or have it up, parting things out is always an option too, right? Just part it out and add it to your larger collection. Some sets are kind of better for that than others, but that's something you can do. But kind of getting us back up into the selling section of this discussion, if you wanted to part something out, part it out and sell stuff, right? I mean, I think you've done a little bit of that on Bricklink. there's a whole series of stores on Bricklink whose kind of only job it is, or people who make that kind of a both a career, I suppose, and a hobby and passion of parting things out to sell on Bricklink. So
yeah, and if you're one of the lucky people that really don't like minifigures, you can pretty easily part out a set and just part out the minifigures, and then I've done a couple of like set drafts, and sometimes there's people who like they're just so focused on the minifigures, and like we don't split them up, and I'm like, that's great. I'm gonna take all of these 1x4 masonry bricks. That's cool with me. So, sometimes you do. Sometimes you just don't actually care about the minifigures. You just want the set, and you sell the minifigures, and again, you get usually when people are selling the minifigures, we had a comment on it when we were talking about that kind of price of minifigure changing over time. But with a lot of these license sets, people on Bricklink will, you take the minifigures and you make 50 to 70% back on the actual set itself, because it came with 7 minifigures. You sell them for $10 a piece and $70, right?
Especially if you just don't,
was
like
$100 set.
If you don't care, and it's a brand.
There are people that like Lego bricks, believe it or not,
over the minifigure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I prefer slopes, but anyways, it's neither here nor there. And the other thing you can do too is you can hold on to it, right? Yeah. You don't have to sell it. And I think that's kind of bringing it full circle of the KonMari method, right? Of like just kind of being self-aware of like, is this thing bringing me joy? Like, I've also regretted selling Lego, right?
Yeah.
And the last thing you want to do is just create this cycle of regret of like, well, I bought this, sold it, didn't want I didn't want to sell it, so I bought it again, and then I felt bad because I bought it, and then I felt bad because why do I have it? So I guess I'll just sell. Like, stop. Self-awareness. Sometimes it's okay to wait before you make that decision, right? Mm-hmm. We talk about how we move so much. My wife and I have a rule of, we move every 2 years or so. So it's like, if it stayed in the box during our last move, there's no reason for us to hold on to it. Now, there is for some things, right? Like there's some scrapbooks from my wife's childhood that her grandma made. Like, we don't go through those every year. They stay in the box because they stay packed unless we have a reason to go through them. We don't get rid of it, but I think I just got rid of a popcorn maker that I've never used because I got another popcorn maker and it was literally just sitting there. So holding on to things, hold on to stuff is I guess a counterintuitive way to get rid of it, or to at least make the decision, right? Sometimes, like you mentioned, out of sight, out of mind. If it's out of sight but still in your mind, that's okay.
Right.
Just doesn't need to be on display. It doesn't need to take up the space. Don't need to have it out.
And I think Grinch's is actually a really great example. You mentioned you've been moving almost every 2 years. You guys have been doing that now for what, almost 10 years, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
My family and I, we've been moving now. I said, like, again, the last 3 years we've moved. We're moving 3 times in the last 3 years, which has also been wild. And just in terms of the proximity, one of the things that's been really helpful, for example, unrelated to Lego, is I'll go into my closet, and if there's like a dress shirt or something that I have not worn at all, and I'm like, I didn't wear it this move, and I didn't wear it. I don't remember the last time I wore this. I have gotten rid of so much stuff, and I wouldn't say gotten rid of. I have donated so much stuff because I'm just like, I'm not wearing this. Somebody else could wear this. They could buy it at Goodwill. They could, whatever the case is. And that's fine. Like, I don't need to hold on to things. And sometimes they're, things that were gifted to me. Sometimes it's and I feel guilty about getting rid of it, or it's something I bought and it was expensive and I just don't wear it. And it's like, dude, just don't hang on to it to hang on to stuff, right? So to your point, it sounds counterintuitive, but if you're to hold stuff back and hold on to things, sometimes that allows you to reevaluate your relationship with it. Because if you do hold on to something, like you said, right? Sometimes you hold on to things for a purpose, for a reason. Like me, I don't have, in my last where we lived last, I bought like the Dune Ornithopter. When I got to our current house, I never unpacked the Dune Ornithopter because I just had no place to put it at the time. Do I still really like that set? Yes. Do I want to hold on to it? Yes. Right? Like,
I was gonna say you can just send it to me if you know. It sucks. I know it's a crappy set. Yeah.
So like, you know, but it does give you that really great, puts you in a really great headspace to make a more binary decision that feels unemotional, if that makes sense, right? To your point, you know, you found out you had 2 popcorn makers and you're like, what the heck? Like, why do we keep moving this? Let's get rid of it. And, you know, I think that's...
And to be clear, we're going to donate it as well.
Absolutely
like,
right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. At AFOLs Welcome, we always would strongly recommend exploring donation.
Pooping on your Lego bricks and donating your popcorn makers.
Prior to throwing things out. So anyways, or disposing, I suppose, is the better word there. But
disposing your excrement.
Anyways, Grinch. Yeah. So I think those are some good guidelines for people who are maybe looking to downsize or have some other, you know, concerns about that. You know, you've mentioned, or I mentioned that I've seen you get rid of stuff. I fully intend to do that myself when I have time to reevaluate my collection. I'm in the same state and time zone as my collection. So I think that's some wise advice for anyone else who's looking to do that. Grinch, do you have any kind of final thoughts on this topic?
Being self-aware is a very painful process, right?
Yes.
And maybe I'll get a little personal here. I know somebody who got scammed, and you said, feeling guilty about buying something and not using it. You don't have to look at it that way, but you do have to be willing to address the situation that occurred.
Mm-hmm.
And if you bought something and are like, and I've done this with Lego, and it's been a journey of growth, right? Where I've bought something, I said, why did I buy that? Oh, because I had $300 to spend, and I said, you know what, I'm just gonna go I want to buy a big Lego set over $300. I got $300 to spend, right? Kind of like our exercise earlier, where I was like, you know what, I wouldn't buy a set right now.
Yeah.
A, I've seen the leaks, I know stuff's coming. B, I don't have anything on my list that I want. That's part of the reason I keep that running Lego list. I could buy it all today if I wanted to, but it's about, I know I'll get the urge to buy a Lego set, and I have a backlog already. I don't need to add more to the backlog.
Mm-hmm.
I'll make sure I get it before it retires, and it will go in the backlog at that point, because then you're going to be spending more on it, and you'll be a moron it as well. No. But the lesson, right? Being painfully self-aware, is to be aware of yourself, right? I mean, it's not something to feel guilty about if you understand, I just really wanted to buy a Lego set at the time. There was a cool gift with purchase, and so I had to buy something more than $200, I bought that suit, or I got scammed. But if there's a lesson there of what did I do to get myself in that situation, if you've learned from that lesson, it's money well spent.
Yeah.
It becomes a waste
when you relearn the lesson over and over again.
when you pay for that lesson over and over and over again, and don't address the lesson to say, how did I get myself in this situation? But in order to do that, you have to be incredibly self-aware, and that can be scary. That can be a painful place to be, but it can be one of growth, and one where you're putting yourself into a situation to be a better person on the other side.
Absolutely. So
you are in control of that. So when Wes shows up at your house and he says, "Here's $500, but you have to spend it on Lego,"
You can say no.
go buy that aquarium.
Some mixed messages there at the end from the peanut gallery, but no.
Look, if somebody's just showing up at your house and says, "Here's $500, you have to spend on Lego," then go buy what the hell you want. But when it's your money, if you got $500 to spend, you don't just spend it to spend it, right? And
absolutely.
if you do, understand, like, I had a really bad day. I just wanted to get a little bit of that dopamine rush from buying something, so I did. You got to crack open a cold one, right? Like, be painfully self-aware, and you will be better on the other side.
There you go.
All right, so I think that was our main topic for today. A little bit shorter than last week.
Yeah.
Looking at the time here, we're a whole hour and a half behind so far, the record, but
so
I don't think we're going to be breaking. Yeah, so West, I'm going to start spelling everything OUTIFTHATOKAY, question mark. But no. How about we head over to our brick mail?
Let's do it.
Brick mail. All right, so up first for brick mail this week, got a couple of YouTube comments here. T. Consentino. I hope I said that right. It's a YouTube username, so it's just all one word. Great conversation with lots of great thinking points for us AFOLs, although personally, aside from simple ethics, honest marketing, accessibility, sustainability, employee treatment, etc., I do not get much value out of a company's ethics and behavior. I really just care about those baseline things and how the product feels in relation to the cost. This is a very subjective thought, and I was wondering if you guys agree or disagree. Big fan here. Well, first and foremost, glad you're a big fan. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.
And it's a tough one, right? Because it's hard these days, and it's getting harder, right? I mean, you know, there's some CEOs and owners of companies out there that, without getting too into the details, aren't great people. There's a certain trove of files that are being released on whatever basis the government seems to want to release them, even though they were due months ago. But, you know, that's neither here nor there. And you learn about somebody that's in there and you're like, dang, I really liked that thing that person did. And, you know, personal anecdote here, but, you know, the whole Harvey Weinstein thing, he was a movie producer, and, well, I still watch movies that he produced, The Lord of the Rings.
I was wondering where that personal anecdote was going, Grinch, so I'm glad it went the way that it did.
Now, we're not talking about poop here, West, anymore, all right? Clean your mouth up, sir. But you know, Lord of the Rings is still my favorite movie, period. So learning to separate the person from the thing, I think, is a very important skill. But I also think it's one of those things that's a fine line as well. And I think that kind of comes down to personal belief and, you know, what you're willing to, where you're willing to draw that line.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point, Grinch. I think one of the weird things too was, and I understand what T. Constantino is kind of saying here, right? He's saying, look, the ethics are neat, but overall not super compelling as long as me, the consumer, more or less gets what is advertised from the producer or purveyor of the good or service. And I, you know, like cold-hearted economics, like that's probably not a bad way to go about things. And certainly, we interact with a lot of different goods and services in our daily lives where we just kind of accept what we get. And as long as it meets that threshold of like, okay, this is what I was expecting, it met my expectation of what this should be. I don't need to think about this anymore. I'm thinking of household products, your paper towels, for example, where you're just like, I needed some Bounty paper towels. They worked. They picked up the water, and I'm happy with that. You're, name whatever sort of thing that you're, consuming at that kind of level of almost subconscious consumption, right? You go pay for gas somewhere at a gas station. You're just like, I need gas. What's cheap? Oh, everything's pretty much priced the same around this area. Great. Like, what's the closest gas station that doesn't look, nasty? Cool. I'm going to go shop there. Right. Like, just as an example, I would say, I think where things started to get challenging, if we want to trace this back, is in 2014, we had the Burwell versus Hobby Lobby case here in the United States that basically the conclusion from the Supreme Court was that businesses, as well as individuals, had certain constitutional rights. So in this case, they said, hey, Hobby Lobby has this constitutional right to the free exercise of religion, which is why they take certain claims the way they do. And it's not my intent here on this podcast to necessarily say whether, that case was justified or whatnot. But what that then allowed us to do is see corporations not only as just that purveyor of the good and service, but also somebody with a voice, with the free ability to exercise said voice. And so now I think, whether it's good or bad, right? We've seen sort of the natural evolution of this idea to the point where, corporations are having to sort of demonstrate their ethics and morals to a certain extent. And we as consumers are sort of wise to that too. And you've seen all sorts of backlash from all sorts of sides of the political spectrum, depending on what that stance was. And that's just reality these days. And, sometimes I don't think it's necessarily bad to make a choice if you don't support something, or, you have a certain belief that you have strongly held, make that choice. You vote with your wallet, right? That's the old famous saying. So, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but, you can choose to go elsewhere. And so, and you, by voting with your wallet, have a voice too. So I think that's important. But I don't know, those are just some thoughts. Grinch, any kind of follow-ups, or did that spark anything?
There is a famous saying, and I can't believe I'm about to say Karl Marx, but it was kind of coined by Karl Marx, that there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, because the very nature of capitalism relies on exploitation at some point in the process. And morally, you can do the best that you can, but moral perfection is not possible, right? And so, at some point or another in a capitalistic society, somebody is getting effed over, to put it bluntly. If you buy a textile, it's being produced in another country by cheap labor in not great conditions, potentially, right? But you have to have clothes, right? If you buy gasoline, you're not doing well for the environment, but then you get fired from your job, so then you don't do well as a parent because you can't support your kid, right? Like, so there is no ethical perfection here. And so I really, as long as you are acting in an ethical way, right, and have a moral compass, like, that's what you can be in control of. But at the end of the day, you need stuff like food, right? And if you're out of formula for your baby and you have to buy it on Amazon, and you don't want to support Jeff Bezos because he's the richest person in the world, and a Bezos, then
Is that an insult now?
I don't know.
What a
I'm just making it up. Yeah, what a Bezos. but you need the formula, right? So you got to get it sent to your house.
You
right?
don't want to send Katy Perry to
person...
space for the 10th time, you know?
Exactly. So it's a really complex question, and it's a good question.
Yeah,
but that's where it really kind of comes down to where you're okay drawing the line in the sand. West, that example that you gave of the institution that acted and fought for their own right, I've personally drawn in a line that I will not support that place. Period. I've never shopped there, and I never will. And that's a decision that I made.
Yeah. I mean, to Grinch's point, right? What a great conversation to follow. Ironically, saying that, you know, hey, you don't really think too much about the ethics of things, like has created its own little branch here of like a both philosophical and ethical kind of discussion here again on our follow up. But I would say to put it sort of mildly and bluntly, and not to be overly maybe stereotypical or melodramatic, but like, you know, if you can look at yourself in the mirror in the morning and you're like, you know, I'm more or less a good person, then I think you're doing okay, right? It's you know, so as long as that's the case, then you know, you're doing all right.
Was it Kant who said, like, you know, like as long as you believe your intentions are just, they're just?
Well, I don't know. That could be.
It's kind of a slippery slope.
Yeah,
it can be argued, but one of my favorite courses in college was actually bioethics, and it was just debate like this, and you just argued both sides. And it was an elective I had to take as a biology major, and I was like, oh, this is gonna suck. And it was my favorite course I've ever taken. So
yeah.
Phil S. UK writes in, thank you so much for covering this. I'm looking forward to listening when time allows. I suggest this topic because I have been impressed by your considered approach to these sorts of discussions. Keep up the good work. And then he later wrote, edit. Bravo, gents. Excellent listen. Thank you. And I just wanted to say thank you, Phil, for recommending the topic. And like I think we said to Becca during Rebecca, sorry, I don't know if you go by Becca. Like we said to Rebecca. Rebs, like we said to Rebs.
Reba.
We like we like suggestions, and glad that we were able to deliver the episode that met your expectations. Not necessarily the one that you wanted to hear or didn't want to hear, but the one that you had some certain expectations of. There's going to be a conversation done in a certain way, and I think that's what we're most happy that we were able to deliver, right? Because feedback is feedback, right? Sometimes hearing what you don't want to hear is what you need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
So glad you enjoyed it. That's very important too, but also glad that we were able to deliver it in the way that you wanted us to. So
yes, thank you, Phil. We appreciate it, and it was a wonderful suggestion.
Wes, why don't you take our last one?
And our last one comes from friend of the podcast, John FC66, who writes, great episode, was a really complex topic, but you guys did a really good job with it. And I do think you're really fair and weren't just Lego apologists. Loved you guys mentioning Jang Bricks. He's one of my favorite Lego reviewers on YouTube. Yes, John, we appreciate that. You've been a huge supporter of the podcast for, you know, the last year or so, and we really appreciate, you know, you commenting. John actually takes time to comment pretty much on every single one of our episodes, migrating from Spotify to YouTube.
Not pretty much every single one. Every single one.
Which we greatly appreciate it. And, you know...
We don't always reply, but we do always read them. I will say that.
We do.
I reply most of the time, so...
And it's nice to hear that we weren't Lego apologists. You know, it's tough because... if it's not entirely clear at this point in, you know, 91 episodes of a Lego podcast, with I'm sure
we really hate Lego.
But
terrible company.
It's definitely Lego.
Just a terrible product. we're like Darth Maul. Our hatred keeps us going.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You could decapitate us, and episode 92 would be out the next week.
Yeah, we'd have Dave Filoni would find some weird way to resurrect us, and instead of just leaving us in the bottom of a pit where we should have been left. But neither here nor there. John will appreciate
West
that.
can never. West
always got to take the cheap shot.
Just gotta take a cheap shot at Filoni. Jeez.
Anyways,
Filoni Bamboni.
John, we really appreciate it, and the
FC and John FC is actually John Filoni Chad Order 66. By the way, so
it all makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just John Dave Filoni. No. Getting back on track, Lego's been a big part of our lives. It was sort of the impetus for this podcast. We've been huge fans. We've been collecting. I think I've had Lego sets since I was 3 years old, and so we very much have strong opinions about the company, the toy, the experience. But at the same time, too, we want to at least provide an example that you can be fans of something, but not apologists for it. At the same time, too.
You can be a fan, but you don't have to be a stan.
Exactly. We do see a lot of stuff in the wider Lego community where there's a lot of emotion. Like we talked about with the Scuderia helmets in the beginning, where someone said, we got this instead of pirates, and it's like, man, what a poorly informed opinion. And if that is what is getting your heart rate, and your blood pressure, spiking in the morning as you're, in a frenzy typing that out on a keyboard, like we maybe need to have a discussion about what you're prioritizing and the things that are getting you angry probably shouldn't be getting you angry. So we just want to try to provide a positive example for people of, you don't always have to slap down some hate on the keyboard. You can have a constructive conversation about something. So.
Yeah, and we've kind of coined this term of I'm gonna enjoy this set, but I'm gonna enjoy it from afar.
Yeah.
Like the helmets, like I'm not gonna get them.
I might buy the minifigures.
Spoiler alert. I'm not gonna get the helmet, and yeah, maybe you get the minifigure, but I won't get either. But I can appreciate a good Lego set and a cool design and a sleek design when I see it.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when you go to a fan convention, right? You're not sitting there like, I would never build that mock. That mock's dumb. You're like, wow, that's like a really cool Wicked Tower. That like, how did they do that, right? You have this appreciation. Like, you can still appreciate the Lego set for what it is, right? You don't have to buy it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I would encourage you not to if you don't like it. Because this weird thing happens when companies that are out to make a profit sell stuff and sell more of that stuff. Usually what occurs is they make more of those things that are selling. So
if you don't like it.
Weird. I know. And that is a wrap of another episode of AFOLs Welcome. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and leave us a review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you are listening to this show. If you would like to write the podcast, please email us at afolswelcome@gmail.com or follow us on Instagram at AFOLs Welcome. Thank you for listening, and we will catch you on the next one.
See ya.